Today on the audio hotline, I'm going to be reviewing a relatively inexpensive dynamic microphone. This microphone is the Zoom ZDM-1. I'm a very big fan of dynamic microphones in general, especially broadcast-style dynamic microphones, and this microphone kind of falls into that category. According to Zoom, it delivers a warm and rich broadcast sound. We'll see about all that. But before we dive in and get really in depth with this microphone, first thing we gotta do is get mic'd. Welcome all audio nerds to the audio hotline, and as I said before, today we have the Zoom ZDM-1 in the studio. I don't want there to be any confusion though. Today I'm not reviewing the podcast pack that includes this microphone. I believe the podcast pack includes like headphones, an XLR cable, as well as like a desktop tripod stand. So if you don't buy the podcast pack and you buy this instead, those are the things that are excluded. But if you're just starting out and you need those things, you could definitely consider the podcast pack if you like the sound of this microphone. You know, I've had a few comments asking me to review this microphone, and it's actually been out for like 6 months now, maybe a little bit longer. And to be honest, I was just going to skip this mic and not review it. I had like no interest in trying it out, which is weird because it's a style of microphone that I really enjoy reviewing. And also, I love Zoom as a company. Like, I have a lot of Zoom stuff. They just make really cool, convenient products. Speaking of Zoom products, and quite appropriately, might I add, I am recording with the Zoom H6 today. I'm recording at plus 30 decibels. It's stupid, but I was a little bit bugged by the form factor. It essentially looks identical to an AT2020, but it's end address rather than side address. But seriously, if any of you guys are talking into this microphone like this, I will find you and I will booch slap you in your left cheek. Face cheek. Or whichever cheek you prefer. But it seriously looks like Bark from Obscure Mike's got his hands on a AT2020 and was like, I'm gonna mess with the capsule. I'm gonna make this a broadcast dynamic microphone. He loves doing shit like that. Did you do this, Bark? Did you do this? Look at me. Did you do this? Thank you, YouTube, for timestamps, because I've been rambling hard in this one. Anyway. But when I bought this microphone from Breast Guy, it was about $80. And if you're interested in that podcast pack, it comes in at about $120. But as I was researching a little bit for this review, I actually saw that like every place had this for $60, like $20 off on sale. 25% off, that's a pretty big sale for a microphone that's only like 6 months old. But if you're watching this video and the sale's not going on anymore, I get it. I'm an asshole. Let's go ahead and talk about what comes with the Zoom ZDM-1. When you purchase the Zoom ZDM-1, it will come with a pivoting stand mount. It will also come with a 3/8 to 5/8 inch microphone stand adapter. This will include a foam windscreen, some documentation about these products, and of course it will come with the dynamic microphone itself, the Zoom ZDM-1. So when it comes to everything that's included, I think it's a really good deal. I mean, a lot of microphones around this price just come with a mic clip in the microphone, and not even like a very nice mic clip. I absolutely love the pivoting mic mount. They are the best. It's of course awesome that it comes with a microphone stand adapter, and this is definitely one of the few sub $100 microphones that actually comes with a nice windscreen. I mean, this thing feels pretty solid, and it's actually surprisingly thick. That's what But in all seriousness, this windscreen actually seems to work pretty well. Now, when it comes to the build of the microphone itself, it does feel slightly lightweight, but it is all built really well. It's all metal. The grill feels really nice. It doesn't feel like it's going to dent easily. But just overall, the accessories and the build quality of everything feels absolutely worth $80, if not more. Well, now that we've talked about what comes with the ZDM-1, now let's go ahead and talk about what comes in the ZDM-1. I'm giving us all permission to nerd out and talk about some specs. The Zoom ZDM-1 is a dynamic XLR microphone with a supercardioid polar pattern. This has a frequency response of 50 Hz to 18 kHz, a sensitivity of -54 decibels, an output impedance of 200 ohms, a minimum load impedance of 200 ohms, and a max SPL of 135 decibels. Now, when it comes to the frequency response graph of this microphone, you can see that there is a dip in the low end. It looks like there is a tiny boost in the low end, about 150 Hz. The mids are relatively flat, but a little after 1 kHz, it does start to boost pretty substantially. At its highest point, it is about 8 decibels boosted in the high end, before eventually dropping below 0 decibels a little before 20 kHz. Now, when it comes to the frequency response graph, it honestly seems really like voice focused. But in all reality, this microphone is advertised as a podcast broadcast microphone. I mean, they even have a kit that's called the Podcast Pack, so yeah. So it makes sense that the low end is a little bit dropped off to get rid of some rumble, and that there is a boost in the high end to add some clarity. Now, I know I've talked about differences in polar patterns in a ton of different reviews, but I'm just going to briefly summarize. This microphone has a supercardioid polar pattern, which means that it is most sensitive in front, less sensitive on the sides, least sensitive about 120 to 135 degrees, but then it does have an area of sensitivity directly behind the microphone at 180 degrees. Cardioid is different, but it is also most sensitive in the front, less sensitive on the sides, and least sensitive directly behind it. You might be asking yourself, why does this matter? Well, if you're going to be having any noise in your room, if you're going to have someone in the room talking with you for a podcast, it's important to know these polar patterns and where they are least sensitive. Because wherever that noise is happening, you want to make sure that the least sensitive part of your microphone is aimed at it. For a supercardioid microphone, I'd put them about 120 to 135 degrees to the microphone. I tend to prefer cardioid just simply because in situations that I've been in, I found that it's easier to point the back of the microphone directly at whatever sound I want to eliminate rather than trying to angle it. But supercardioid is great also. They're just a little bit different, but it's important to know the differences. But now that we've gone through the accessories and the build quality and we talked about the specs, now let's go ahead and run a bunch of tests on this microphone. During these tests, I will use the windscreen sometimes and not other times. But to know exactly what tests I'm doing and any other information that you might need to know, I'll have it down in the lower third of the video. Down here somewhere. But let's go ahead and kick it off with a proximity effect test. If you want to get all up on this microphone's grill, literally, then here's how it's gonna sound. Maybe making out with foam is more of your speed. If so, here's how it sounds. Now let's go ahead and test the plosives. It may potentially get a little loud. Peter Piper picked a patch of pickled peanuts. 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 Now, if you're going to use this microphone while you're typing on a keyboard, just banging on that shiz, here's how it's going to sound. And yes, I did angle it at about 130 degrees from the front of the microphone, so it would reject as much sound as possible. Now to test the polar pattern even more, let's use some white noise. Now, if you want to use this microphone for a podcast or anything where you're going to put some post-processing on it, here's how it could sound with a little bit of EQ, some compression, maybe a limiter, and whatever else I use, I'll let you know on the screen. Now, here's just a real quick example of the same post-processing, but without the windscreen on. Here's me just a couple inches away from the microphone, and now here's the microphone about 3 feet away. Now, as an additional test for this next little bit, I'm just not going to use the windscreen just so you can hear how that sounds. Well, now that we've gone through the basics, we talked about the specs, and we even tested this microphone out, now I'm ready to get to my review, my opinion of the Zoom ZDM-1. To start this off, I guess I'll just say that after being reluctant to try this microphone out, I'm glad that I did try it out. I feel like this microphone does a good job of doing what it's intended for. It has good accessories and an absolutely great price. A lot of broadcast dynamic microphones around this price point tend to lack a little bit of oomph. They can just sound a little bit thin. But I feel like the ZDM-1 doesn't really have that issue. But I feel like this did a good job, especially when you got up close, of giving you a little bit of a little bit of a little bit of huh? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. but it does a good job with the low end not being rumbly, but just sounding good. And it'd be easy for people that don't have as much bass in their voice to just add a little bit in post if you wanted it. This microphone does have a nice top end, a nice amount of clarity, but not being too over the top and not having sibilance issues. But speaking of the top end, as you can tell, when the windscreen gets on, you lose a little bit. But I don't think it kills the sound or anything, but it does absolutely help, get rid of some of those plosives and some of that breathiness. And as far as the mids go on this microphone, they actually sound really good. But I do love the fact that this microphone does sound good just right out of the box. I mean, each voice is different, but I think Zoom did a really great job just giving you an awesome starting point. And if you want to, do a little EQ and post, have at it. But if I was going to summarize this microphone, I would say that it is not a musician's mic. This microphone should be used for spoken word. That's where it's going to shine. That's where it's going to sound good. So for people that are looking to do spoken word applications like a podcast, and this is the budget that they're looking at, I think you should pull the trigger on it. This thing is nice. I'm actually a little bit surprised that I like it as much as I do. I wasn't expecting great things, which is funny because I love Zoom. Not the video meeting app. The damn audio company. But there's no reason that someone couldn't get a great sounding podcast out of this microphone. I think it is a great deal at $80. And the fact that it's on sale right now for $60 is insane. But the idea of getting a Focusrite Scarlett Solo or even an Audient Evo 4 plus this microphone for $200, that's a great kit for a podcaster. But if you couldn't tell, I recommend this microphone. And the grade that I give the Zoom ZDM-1 for spoken word applications is an A. Thank you all for watching this review of the Zoom ZDM-1. I hope it helped you out, helped you decide whether you want to get one of these or not, but most of all, I hope you had fun. Yeah. Thank you to everyone that subscribes to this channel. I really appreciate all of the support. And a big thank you to me for buying this from the local breast guy. Zoom didn't send it to me. Zoom's never sent me anything. Hey, Zoom. What's up? But once again, thank you all for watching the Audio Hotline. I'll see you audio nerds next time.